Alan Haller, well, he thinks Michigan State football and athletics is on the path to success, but it doesn't matter what he thinks. Let's ask Graham Couch about it right now. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for ending your week with us here at Locked On Spartans. It's your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below if you believe in the trajectory of Michigan State football, because joining us today, friend of the program, you guys already know who he is. It's Lansing State Journal columnist Graham Couch of the Couch in the Room podcast. This man does it all. Content machine over there. And helping him recently, athletic director Alan Haller. You sat down with an interview with him, Graham, and he's pretty high on the trajectory of Michigan State athletics, talked about football. He thinks things are in a good spot. But Graham, shoot us straight. Are we on the path to glory here? Obviously, the athletic director is going to say some nice things, but the columnist in you, what do you think about this, Graham?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's still to be determined. I think there's an understanding to some degree what needs to be done and in terms of resources. And I think they've got a coach who has obviously built a program somewhere else, and I think understands what he needs to compete and fit a roster that competes. Getting it done, though, is something we'll have to see. And, I think one of the things that's going to get real interesting, and you saw from the interview with Alan Haller, is they're obviously very much looking forward to July 1 when revenue sharing begins in earnest, and after the House, with the House settlement. And for football, that'll mean a lot of resources. And I think at MSU, a lot of resources allocated toward football. But what will be interesting, I think if you're at Purdue or you're at Illinois, that's a tremendous day because it raises the floor for places that are really struggling with it. And so it raises everybody's floor if you can afford the revenue share. If you're Michigan State, however, and you're trying to then be in that next tier up and you're trying to be a top third program in the Big Ten, as Haller said, that's the expectation. I still think NIL collectives and outside resources are going to play a pretty big role in separating teams and in terms of talent acquisition and retaining rosters and all that sort of stuff. So that's what we'll have to see. What does that look like? How strong are they there moving forward? And that's what you don't know, because I think that will ultimately, when I think of, those who follow European soccer, right? Mm-hmm. State's kind of like Tottenham in a sense. They're not quite the biggest of the big clubs. They're not, it's like, what are they going to be? Can they afford to really exist with the Chelseas and the Liverpools of the world, or is this more a mid-table club that makes a run once in a while? So that is, sorry to bring soccer in it so early, but it's where my head goes. Yeah. Anyways, I don't think we know yet, and I think how that's all handled and managed will I don't have any doubt if the resources are there at the highest level. I think that this is probably a staff that can get it done. What will those resources be when all said and done relative to the other top teams in the Big Ten?
I had over 15 minutes for a soccer reference for you. I lost that bet by about 12 smooth minutes there, man. That's, incredible. But we'll take it. It's a good reference. And, Graham, I didn't send you anything in regards to this interview, the outline that I had laid out. I just leave you high and dry. But you just went right there. You picked the second thing that I wanted to talk about, and it was that answer about, will collectives, NIL collectives, have a place in college football, specifically here at Michigan State, of course, after July 1st, and he said to be determined. Graham, am I just stupid? Let me elaborate on that before you just jump to an answer. Just for thinking that it's a no-brainer that collectives will still be prevalent in college football after July 1st when this revenue sharing kicks in. I don't want to use the word alarming, but interesting that the athletic director himself said to be determined, when I'm over here thinking the toothpaste is out of the tube. This will always be prevalent, even with the $21 million that schools have to shell out. there's always going to be something above that now. Am I way off base here, or how do you read that situation?
Yeah, no, I think, it will. Now, other places may determine how they allocate resources differently based on, NIL availability outside and inside. You might be able to make up some of that if you do more in-house. I don't know. But I also think, there are supposedly going to be some actual rules with it in terms of with an actual clearinghouse, in terms of things being a little bit more legitimate. Now, there has been zero evidence through the early stages of NIL that the NCAA has any teeth on this, right?
Correct. Right. Yes.
So we'll see if that comes to fruition, if there are any actual laws passed, or what comes down the pike with collective bargaining, or what there is, and that would, for example, one of the reasons a WNBA team got in trouble for a similar type of, NIL deal is it was collectively bargained into the WNBA contracts. So they can't do that. They can have,
Gotcha. Okay.
But you can't have pay for play sort of deals to supplement salaries. So down the road, you could get there, I guess. I don't know what the appetite is for that. I don't know. I'm very skeptical that there will be. Now, what I do believe is there is donor fatigue. I believe in that.
Sure. Yeah.
I do think that this setup that now exists a lot of places, there isn't a lot of clear return on investment. There's not. It's some places do it better than others, but I think that is something that we'll see. Like, is 5 years from now, is the way this all works sustainable with what you're asking donors and what they get out of it? I don't know that it is, and that includes a lot of places. Maybe there are a few places where they're just maniacal enough to get it done. Yep. So I think if that's what the to be determined is, and so there are two ways to look at what Haller said. One, it's to be determined with collectives seems a little naive. And yet also sort of saying, when you talk about the resources, that they have to be in the top, 1/3 of the Big Ten, and an 18-team league. You're talking about a top 6 club or top 6 team. Sorry for the soccer reference, but anyway, and that's sort of his, I don't want to say promise, but his edict to get that done. Like, that's what he's got to do. That's on him to get it done. That's on his department to get that done, and the donors and his ability to fundraise. And then it's on from there. The expectation is contending for championships, and that's on Jonathan Smith. The one thing I thought that was important is he sort of set the bar, and he said, this is what has to be done on my end, and this is what has to be done on the coaching staff's end, and that creates the expectation. I think in that he is sort of on record creating the expectation, which I think is probably a good thing for Michigan State fans that want them to compete for championships.
Still more to come with our guy, Graham Couch, but first need to talk your ears off about Gametime. And guys, you've already know all the reasons why I love Gametime. It's because it's all about saving money with the flash deals, the last-minute deals. But let's talk about something else here, too, because with the Gametime guarantees, well, yes, you're always going to get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime's going to credit you 110% of the difference. But it's not just about saving money, guys. They also have job loss assurance if you lose your job and need a refund. Yeah, Gametime has you covered. How nice of them. Event cancellation protection, automatically full refunding your tickets for events that are canceled and not rescheduled, and 24-hour returns guarantee. Return your tickets within 24 hours from the time of purchase for a full credit to your Gametime account, no questions asked. Guys, Gametime hooks it up, and, well, they want to hook you up right off the bat. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's Gametime. Also, guys, yes, I did some shopping for myself this holiday season at homefieldapparel.com. On YouTube, you can see, that's right, University of Hawaii hoodie. I got another one by Homefield because they are the most comfortable pieces of clothing I have. Also, looks pretty good, too. Same with this wonderful trucker hat. Now, this is a Michigan State hat, of course. But, guys, it's hats, long-sleeve T-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies. They have you taken care of. Not too late to do some holiday shopping, right, everyone? So if you want to shop for yourself, like I have, well, mosey on over to homefieldapparel.com. Enjoy their Michigan State clothing. And, well, if you're like me, shop outside of the school, too. That's how great their stuff is. May or may not also got a University of Florida T-shirt recently. They're just so cool. And what's even cooler than, well, just feeling good, Looking good, it's saving money. When you go to homefieldapparel.com, smash in promo code Spartan24. That's all one word, Spartan24, for 15% off your first purchase at homefieldapparel.com. Again, guys, homefieldapparel.com, Spartan24, save 15% off your first purchase. What was the most interesting thing he said, in your opinion? Because I just laid mine out right there, kind of his reluctance to comment on what happens after July 1st. But was there something in your chat that you're like, we're going to put a pin in this one, and maybe more State fans should be more reactionary to something that he said here?
It's a good question.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I am curious to see how, there's a lot of investment, for example, in women's sports coming. He talked about $1 million, there's 20 to 25 scholarships, and how that affects those sports, and how that affects, what the investment is in certain men's sports, and sort of the priorities. I think it's pretty clear to see where their priorities are going forward. Football is number one. Like, I don't think there's any doubt. There's an clear understanding that, you have to have healthy football. You have to invest in football, that nothing you do anywhere else can take away from football investment.
Right.
But then it's very clear also that women's basketball, hockey, and men's basketball are like the priorities, right? Those are the sports that they think, in volleyball to a degree, but it's very clear. It'll be interesting to see what they're able to do in those sports, if they're able to create separation of resources with what I think, and women's soccer is another one I forgot to mention. But it's one of those times where you want to be good right now if you're a sport. Like, you can think of 5 years ago, I'm not sure if this came along that women's soccer would have been such a priority. Mm-hmm. But you sort of win yourself into becoming a priority, right? Yeah. And so I think that was interesting. I thought that where he's changed his tone a little bit too. I asked him about the student athletes becoming employees, right? And that collective bargaining piece. And, until now, he's been very firm that some degree of amateurism should exist. Now, players are getting paid or whatever, but not that, he's sort of, that was where he was early on. I think you can see a definite shift. I mean, he basically said every move that's being made right now, and he said by us, meaning himself and the other schools and the NCAA, and is to turn this into professional sports. Like, every move that's being made is a professional move. And so when you think about it from that, I mean, he doesn't see, I don't think he any longer sees a way that this doesn't wind up with much more of student athletes as employees. And if that's the case, then it's a different system a few years from now, probably. And which I think could be good for, one of the things that I think is a problem right now for fans is you just don't have a way to, it's hard to connect with people when you don't know how long they're going to be there. When players are there for 4 months, 6 months, they have no commitment to the school beyond the next few months till the next transfer portal opens. Yep. And I think people have adjusted to the idea that they're getting paid, that this is more professional, that maybe that's right. But I think there still needs to be an understanding of contracts. When you have your favorite professional team, you know how long a guy is signed for, right?
100%. Yeah.
If everything's even if everything's a 1 year deal, a guy shows up in January on a 1 year deal without a buyout, he's not leaving in May. Mm-hmm. And that sort of thing. It would help coaches build their rosters and all that. So I think getting to a point where there's a little more structure and accountability, and I think would make a difference.
So you, of course, are famous for the 3 quick takes after Michigan State football games, basketball games, all sorts of games out there, Graham. I got 3 hot takes, though, that I need an adult in the room to grade right now. And you have been that for me on this show many a times. Even back in the state news days, Graham, you have been a mentor of sorts. So please check me if these need to be checked. You also, did a little bit of writing on stadium renovations. The fine folks at Spartans Illustrated, also very in-depth of what that means. We're talking new video board upgrades. We're talking suite upgrades. Graham, my first hot take is I don't need stadium upgrades, like at all, let alone video boards, suites. I don't even need new bathrooms. What I need, maybe just a good offensive line. I'm sure there's a bunch of contractual obligations and jargon and lawsuits, but funnel all the money into the NIL pool. Like, you know what would really enhance the game day experience? Watching a good football team. So I don't need stadium renovations, Graham. I don't. I just need a team that could get to 8 wins, make it 9, dare me with 10. So that's my first take. Don't renovate the stadium. Renovate the offensive line.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there are a lot of people who feel differently than you. I mean, they want the offensive line too.
I'm in the minority. I know I am. Yeah. I like how just steel and concrete Spartan Stadium is. I like it that it feels like a prison when you walk in. That's the kind of atmosphere I like. So I'm in the minority.
I like old places. I like the nostalgia of it. Like I am terrified if they upgrade the bathrooms, they'll get rid of the troughs. You know, like I don't need that.
I know.
I like a good trough. So those are the things that I don't need. But I do think that, you know, I do think most people think there's a serious need for upgrades, that the experience is not what it is other places, and that matters in terms of not only attendance, but attracting people and, you know, and having the donor spaces and other things like that be better. I mean, these are the people you're asking a lot of money from too. So like, I think that's something to keep in mind. Some people have said, why renovate the West Tower before you do the East Side? And that's, you know, the East Side needs it more, but the East Side is I think a bigger overhaul and probably much more expensive than renovating places that are already sort of built. And also those are areas where the people who you're counting on to continue to fund this exist on game days and exist for other functions and events. And so that's to me why I do it. No, I think they need to upgrade the stadium. I think I don't think that's a question, but I understand what you mean, that like if you have a choice, you'd rather have winning football.
Yeah.
And I think you're probably not alone in that sense.
Yeah, it's a small percentage of us, but yeah, that's what we're feeling. Take number 2. Grant, are we in the mood to upset people right now? Because this is where take number 2 is going. What kind of a mood are you in right now?
Wherever you want to go, I'm good. You know, I'm always willing to poke the bear.
Great. Schedule dropped yesterday. That's right. Michigan State, they finished with another home game, this one against Maryland. So let's just dive right into it. Take number 2, the Maryland game needs to be played at Ford Field. That's right. We're doing that trope all over again, baby. But yeah, I saw the images of Spartan Stadium. It was not even a third full, certainly not even a fifth full after halftime. And quite frankly, why would it be? And I remember last year being at Ford Field, Michigan State about to get properly fed into a wood chipper by Penn State. That thing was still sold out. Even if you move that game to Ford Field, 6 home games for Michigan State fans. Graham, I think I just upset the greater Lansing area listenership of Locked On Spartans, and especially, the Grand Rapids greater area too. Does this game deserve to be moved to Ford Field, or are you going to keep on shoveling just third full stands for senior day at Spartan Stadium?
Well, there are a couple different ways to look at it. I do think the Ford Field experience can be a decent one, and I think it was, other than the outcome was so bad, that hindered it a little bit with the first one, but it's a warm place that serves beer and puts on a good event, right? It's not a bad place to have a game.
No.
And it's a great place to have a game if you live on the east side of the state, for sure. And
that's right.
So, but people don't like, and granted, if you're not going to get a good experience in that last game at Spartan Stadium, I do think it's worth doing here and there. I mean, ideally, you would not have that game. You would not have a second straight year of having the after Thanksgiving Day game. And I think eventually, I do think those games won't be there because a couple things are going to happen. One, you're going to lose the conference championship games in the pretty near future, I think.
Okay.
And but because of that, you start to wonder, well, maybe these games will be there because the playoff's going to move up, right? It's going to move back towards they need to end the playoff about 10 days earlier, a week and a half earlier than they are. I also think at some point the NFL is going to go to 18 games. And when that happens and they begin on Labor Day, college football won't want to begin when they do. They will start a week earlier. The whole calendar will start to get shifted. So there's lots of things in the long term. I think there's part of me that thinks these people are in the places like East Lansing. Priority should be given not to be playing that game that day there. Like, how about you play that day at USC, or something like that?
Now we're talking. Yeah.
How about you play more? I mean, you see it in Major League Baseball early in the season. They play road games. The teams up north play road games. Well, the Big Ten, most of the Big Ten is still up north. And the problem with some, people like Michigan State saying, we don't want this game, we can't fill the stadium, it's bad weather, is like 60 miles away, they pack a stadium for a huge game in the same climate. And so, it's just kind of a whiny, take on it. It's just, you got to have a better team. If your people care, they should show up. It's a tricky spot because the students are away.
Right.
And there's all that sort of stuff. It's never going to be a great spot. There have been times where the stadium has been fairly full. because it's been a big game, and that's what you got to do. You got to have a winning football team, and you'll have an okay crowd. That's what it comes down to. But the Ford Field component, I don't think that's a bad idea. It's just I think if you did it next year, you would be reacting to this year in ways that maybe you don't want to. I think the Ford Field way every 5 years or something like that, it's not a bad play. I would not look to do it every time there was a game after Thanksgiving.
That's where I was at, like maybe every 4 or 5 years to do it. But when my head was at the pillow last night, and I'm just thinking, like, why not just do it just 2 years after the fact? Let's stir the pot with Graham tomorrow. It's like maybe it does make sense, but everything you also laid out makes sense as well. FanDuel Sportsbook is keeping the action hot this NFL season. We already know that they've done it for the college football season. Of course, you could still get in on that action with the college football playoff rolling around. But yes, I'm already starting to sweat about Sunday's game if you already know this, but you probably already know this by now. I'm a big Lions fan right now. 2.5-point favorite against Buffalo. I will be glued to the television, not just because I'm a big Lions fan, but because I will have action on this game because, well, FanDuel makes it so fun. And it gets even funner. Yeah, sure. If you're a new customer, because you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place those bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet for new customers. That is at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Greg, I also do want to go back for my third hot take to that last game. After the game, obviously, Aidan Chiles not too thrilled. He said something along the lines of, I don't care about the fans, except the ones that were there. My third hot take is I think it's almost strange that he hasn't, I guess, clarified that. It's not like he doesn't have a social media account. He doesn't have like the opportunity to do so. Am I just being too whiny of a fan being like, oh, why doesn't he care about us? Or do you think that maybe something should have been said like, hey, love to Michigan State. See y'all next year. I don't know. A lot of silence after that comment, which I think is unusual in my opinion.
It's a weird spot because if you listen to it closely, it did sound like at the end of it, he sort of had this sort of just kidding moment. But
I couldn't read that. Yeah, I know.
You really have to squint to see it. Like I know people were getting on Solari and other people for putting the quote out as it was and just assuming that he was kidding. In real time, I didn't think he was kidding, and I'm there. So you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't say that in a press conference if you're not going to make it very clear you're kidding. And I do understand the point, and Haller tried to clarify it for him, which I also think in a social media era where these guys just get tons of gruff all year long, right? And they see it and they live on their phones. I can understand that feeling. Now, what he's got to understand though is that especially now, fans pay for all this. Their passion makes this possible. Fans make this go. Go back to soccer, for example, and one of the reasons I keep bringing up soccer here is one thing that European soccer does understand that college football doesn't. College football is our closest parallel to what happens over there. Is like they understand, the big clubs understand what happens to the little clubs is important, and a lot of them are all about each other. There's much more selfishness and greed here. Ohio State doesn't care what's happening at Central Michigan, right? Whereas that wouldn't be necessarily the case over there. And that's a problem a little bit. But also you see over there, teams lose on the road. They go and they applaud their fans, right? They understand those folks are paying their salaries. And I think that college football players need to understand that. Just because they're unhappy, just because you're catching – and look, what's on social media is toxic and ridiculous. And, you'd like to tell a young person not to be on there. And I don't believe that people under 18 should even be on social media, period.
Fair.
I think it's an awful, awful place, a lot of it. But, if you're going to be the quarterback, and you also need to understand that it comes with the territory. But yeah, I don't know if I'm surprised he didn't clarify it. I also don't mind somebody who said what they said, saying what they said. And maybe there was a little bit of, I'm just kidding in there. It was not clear though to people in real time too. It was not clear. And so people getting on Chris or anybody else for just putting out what was said is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, because I saw those comments too. It's like, oh, this quote is out of context, and then I just watched the clip like 5 times in a row. It's like, no, that is squarely within the confines of context right there. So,
Here's what I would
whatever.
Anybody who put that out, if
Mhm.
Khalil Mullings had said the same thing, would you also be defending him and going, this was out of context? People are think it's out of context because they want it to be out of context, right?
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
that is what you have to think about. Like, would you do this in every other situation? Pro player, college player to rival. Do you think this is out of context? And you can squint and see sort of what he meant. And that's one of the reasons I didn't use it, is I was a little unclear on what he meant. So I wasn't certain what I was writing. But I don't think to like share it in the moment was it all out of bounds.
I don't think so either. And look, like we ranted and raved about it after he made the comments, and I overall wasn't a fan. But if not for nothing else, like, boy, you want a player to have a chip on his shoulder going into the offseason. That's one way to squarely place it on there. So we'll see what happens in the offseason. I'm still rooting for Aidan. I still like the kid. I mean, it's just an emotional quote after not just an emotional game, but emotional end of a car crash to the season. Grant, let's end with this. Let's grade ourselves right now. And actually, here on Locked On Spartans, we didn't have any takes that aged poorly. Like, we got everything right, as long as no one listened to the Jack Vallian, Brendan Parachek, or Quindarius Dunnigan episodes, or the time where we said over and over again they'd be 7-5 and going to a bowl game. If you don't listen to those episodes, then really hit it out of the park, Graham. But how about you? Did you have any hot takes before the season that really aged like milk left on the counter for 2 months? Or were you also perfect over there?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember what I had. I've gotten better, but I mean, I've had some doozies over the time. I mean, you go back.
Likewise, yeah.
I think there was a 2018 column about the Brian Lewerke led offense with Dave Warner running it, being one of the most prolific ever, or something like that. I thought they were going to be really good. I really did. I thought they were. And that was coming off that 2017 year, and I just thought they were going to age into being a really good team. And I missed horribly. And I've had others as well. This year, I mean, I've become much more cautious. At one point, I mean, I will say this. I did think the defense early on was actually good and was going to hold up. And then some of that I've learned over time, like the depth. Michigan, nobody has depth, right? Michigan State does not have depth right now.
Sure.
And the number of injuries they had in the back end. And we saw it in the year, even in 2021, when they were pretty good otherwise. When all of a sudden that hit and they get to the Purdue game and they just couldn't stop anybody for a while, right? It was just, and so there's some realities that, and this was obviously a very different season, but the pass rush situation, the inability to get a sack after the first few weeks when they were like at 15 sacks after 3 games and near the top of the nation. And I thought what they were doing schematically in terms of sort of creating layers of pressure was really sophisticated, and they had the bodies to do it. And for the first, they've told us many years before, not just this staff obviously, but other staffs, that they had great depth on the defensive line. And it almost always since D'Antonio has never really shown up, and this turned out not to either. So I'll be more cautious with that. I think certainly going forward, I've long been cautious with the offensive line. It's just one of those things I'm gonna have to see it to believe it.
Unfortunately, that was one of the things we were right about, is that the offensive line of the depth going to be an issue going into this year. I wish I was right about any of the fun things, Unfortunately, it was all about the sadder things, but it's okay because nothing aged. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No Nick Marsh takes that aged well or anything like that?
You know what? That was the one good one that did, because that was one of my bold predictions, that he would have over 40 receptions, which is very rare even for a highly rated receiver. And sure enough, he set freshman records. But, who cares in a bowl this year when we get the fun stuff right, Graham? It's all about the air balls that we laid up here. So
here's what I would say. I think the Marsh thing is important, though, and because what you do need going forward is you need guys who are difference makers, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so there have been years where it looked bleak and you didn't really see that coming out. At least you have a guy. Yeah. And I think, for all of Aidan Chiles' stumbles, he's also somebody who can make every throw in the book. And so if you're a receiver in the transfer portal who's looking to get to the next level, you want to go play for somebody who can get you the ball and get you the ball in every space on the field. And so I think there's the potential to land another guy like that. We'll see elsewhere, but I think they're in better shape than they've been in some seasons when things have looked bleak, if that's at all a reason for optimism, just because they have guys who have, upside, and upside matters. And now they're going to have to add more of them to be competitive next year, but that's something.
ending right there on a high note. That's Graham Couch. He knows how to walk us off in a happy mood as we go into the weekend. Graham, anything you want to plug here before we let you go? Enjoy this weekend and the upcoming holiday season.
Little women's basketball. Got a Michigan State women's basketball column at lsj.com. It'll be up when you see this, and then they play Sunday against Iowa. A really telling game, and they've become a fun program. I think the best ticket in town in terms of bargain and entertainment. And I think there's some real interesting things over there with Robin Freilic's program.
It's like 90.6 points per game, top 5 in the nation, largest point differential. They are a wagon right now. Noon at Breslin Center Sunday, just like Graham said. So go check them out over there. Folks, we will be back sometime over the weekend. Take care of yourselves this weekend. Let's mix in a water. Thank you very much, Graham, for your time, and all the viewers, all the listeners. Thank you all so much. Love you all. Go Green.